Hello and welcome. In this video, we're going to be talking about 5 of the 10 movies that I have on my list of my favorite underrated and underappreciated movies. So stick around right after this and we'll get started. Welcome once again, my name's Austin and this channel is all about digging deeper and going further to better understand faith and film and everything that's in between. If that's exciting to you, make sure you click that subscribe button down below so you don't miss out on any new videos. Now this is a video I've kind of had on the back burner for a while now, for at least a few months, and I wasn't quite sure exactly how I wanted to go about it. If I wanted to just give all 10 in a video and do my top 10 underrated and underappreciated movies, if I wanted to break it down to individual and do one video per movie on this list, or what I ended up deciding on is just a part 1 and a part 2. So in this video, in no particular order, we're going to be going through the 5 movies behind me. Then after next week's haul video, we're going to be jumping back with part 2 on my other favorite underrated and underappreciated movies. So with all of that out of the way, let's get started. Starting things off with over my shoulder here, we have The Legend of Tarzan. I have a very special place in my heart for this movie because if you know me, you know Disney's Tarzan, the animated movie from 1999, is my favorite Disney animated movie. And I felt like this was a great follow-up to that story. There is by no means any real relation to the original Disney animated classic, but for me personally, having grown up on Disney's Tarzan and watched that countless times throughout my childhood, and now growing up, and when this movie came out in I believe 2016, I was kind of raised on Tarzan, and then this movie was almost like a let's kind of put an adult spin on this. It's a little more mature, more serious, more violent, much more of an adult adaptation of the Tarzan story. It's more based off of the original works of the Tarzan books from my knowledge, but at the same time, I felt like it was a really good companion to the Tarzan story, where in the Disney's Tarzan, you kind of get his childhood, his adolescent years, and once he's a young adult. This is once he leaves the jungle, goes and spends a life with Jane, and then comes back for certain reasons. Obviously, the apes don't talk in this one. There's not musical numbers. Phil Collins is not a part of the musical score, but still, I really enjoy what they did with this movie. I feel like it's definitely underappreciated and, in my opinion, very underrated of what they were able to accomplish with this one. Alexander Skarsgård and Margot Robbie had great chemistry as Tarzan and Jane, and I love revisiting this movie and introducing it to people who just never gave it a chance. Next, also over my right shoulder, we have The Island. This is what I consider to be probably the only Michael Bay movie that I really love. The first time I watched this movie, I went into it completely blind. I rented the DVD from my local library just kind of on a whim because I saw that Ewan McGregor and Scarlett Johansson were in it. I love Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Scarlett Johansson was great too. And I really was just blindly went into this one just checking it out for the first time. I had no idea kind of the twists and turns that are revealed that really are kind of given away in the trailers. So now, anytime I go back to this movie with someone, I try to take them into it as blind as possible just because I feel like it's a really fun, exciting experience. It's one of the least Michael Bay-esque movies that Michael Bay has made. Not to say he makes just crap movies all the time, but it doesn't have a ton of his fingerprints on it, and I feel like that makes it really cool, really unique. I love the story for this one. The action's really cool. And in my book, it's definitely underrated just based on the fact that it's made by Michael Bay, so most people probably just write it off. The next 2 over my left shoulder are actually ones that I've been introduced to fairly recently, I think just in the past year or so. And the first one we'll talk about is Life. Now, I actually kind of talked about it when I picked up the video in the haul that I did for the month when I picked up Life, but that's a movie I stayed away from for a long time. I had just kind of written it off as a really cheap kind of Alien knockoff with, you know, big name actors and whatnot because I have such an adoration for the Alien franchise, especially the first 2 movies. And I just thought they're basically just remaking Alien again. So I never really checked it out. Finally, based on a couple of recommendations I saw in random YouTube videos, a couple comments, I went and checked it out. I ended up just blindly buying it. I got it for like $4, $5 at like an FYE, and checked it out and really, really enjoyed it. I was genuinely impressed and surprised with it. I absolutely loved the cast. I thought it was great. The special effects on the Calvin alien were really good in my opinion. I loved how accurate and authentic everything felt. It was a really good thriller, and the final twist of the movie completely had me. I loved it. And so that's one that I now coming from the perspective of someone who avoided this movie for a long time, thinking it was an Alien knockoff, I now recommend this one to people along with the others who've kind of been an underlying fan base on it. So this is definitely an underappreciated movie in my book. Next, in the fourth spot, we have Overlord. This is a movie that I believe came out in 2019, and this is one I never really checked out. I know there was a ton of kind of like marketing stuff that went on with this one, that they didn't really market it correctly for what kind of movie it is, and so a lot of people didn't really see it, but the people who did tended to really like it. So I did want to check it out. I just didn't really have an interest when it was back in theaters. It just wasn't something that my wife and I would have gone to see together. But then finally when it came out, and I believe about a year or so ago, I picked it up at a Walmart for like $6 or $7 because I had heard good things about it from a couple friends and family members. So I wanted to check it out. So I gave it a chance. Really enjoyed it. I had a ton of fun with it. Basically, the whole Nazi zombie premise of it was a ton of fun. I like how it really teeters the line of could veer into ridiculous territory, but I feel like it balances it so well with its characters and its story. Obviously, it's kind of ridiculous at its core, but I think they balance that line of having fun but being serious really well. So this is a really fun movie. If you're into like the whole Call of Duty Nazi zombies thing, this is one you should definitely check out if you missed it when theaters or you just never got around to it. I definitely recommend it. In my book, it definitely falls into the underappreciated category. The last movie we'll talk about in part 1 of this video, and remember part 2 is coming in a couple weeks after next week's Blu-ray haul, will be Ragamuffin. Ragamuffin is a really special place in my heart for this one because it was one of the first movies I talked about on this channel way back a few years ago now when I started it, which seems so long ago, but it really wasn't. But that's one of the first movies I talked about on this channel, and I had a really cool experience where the director of the movie happened to end up seeing that video and really appreciate what I had to say in it, and that just blew my mind. I absolutely loved just hearing that. It was so cool. But besides that, my feelings on this movie in general, I consider it the only truly great Christian movie, at least of the bunch that I've seen, compared to a lot of the generic stuff that we get for the most part. Christian movies, in my opinion, are actually getting better and have been for the past 5 or so years. But up until then, this was the only one that I really ever kind of turned a candle to and really enjoyed. I love the story. Rich Mullins is a Christian musician that I grew up listening to thanks to my dad. It's probably my dad's favorite artist, and I really appreciate the story in here. It's not afraid to get authentic, real, and dark. There's some really heavy stuff that the main character of Rich Mullins deals with, of it being based on his true life story. I love what they did with the character and how they portrayed him. It's a really great movie for any Christian or anyone really to kind of check out. Especially I recommend it for those who have just really been turned off by most Christian movies that are released. This is for me a saving grace, no pun intended, but I absolutely adore this one. I recommend it as much as I can for people who are looking for something refreshing in the Christian movie industry. So that concludes part 1 of 2 in our kind of 2-part series that we'll do for 10 underappreciated and underrated movies. I hope you've enjoyed my first 5 picks here. Let me know in the comments down below some of your picks for movies that you feel like are underrated or underappreciated. Don't forget, we are doing a Blu-ray haul next week as always, and then after that, come back for part 2 in this series. So make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss out on any of that great content. Thank you for sticking around to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.